Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Dexter Resurrection Season 1 Episode 10. It's called And Justice for All. So spoilers for the episode. It is the end of the season as well, so obviously spoilers for the whole season at this point. This is a Patreon sponsored review, so thank you very much to Cindy for making the pick. And yeah, I've been a little bit more positive than I expected to be over the last few episodes. It's been arguably kind of fun. Okay, I'm not going to go overboard, but compared to the mess that was Alien Earth, this isn't too bad. So we left on the cliffhanger of Dexter being locked in the murder vault, right? In the mansion, while this gala is about to go on downstairs, and that's where we spend almost the entirety of this episode. We, have Dexter find Batista's phone, which gives him a lifeline to the outside world, where he calls in Harrison for help, even though he's reluctant to do so. And Harry in his head is like, no, don't do that. That's a terrible idea. But it means we're kind of paying off that he needs someone else for help, but it does mean that he's putting his son in danger, because if Leon and Charlie see him, it might go very bad. And he's, putting his son at risk by having him come here in the first place, but accepting that he needs help, that he's not just some lone wolf, and that he does need to rely on people, and he's much healthier for relying on people, which is kind of what he gets to at the end of the episode when he's dumping the body, and he's talking about how Harry used to always try and get him to rely on Deb, but she's not here, Harrison is, Harrison can be the one I rely on, and he shows up, literally, but I mean more in a grander sense, he shows up for Dexter, in a big way, and some nice moments are had. So not bad. I think this is a pretty decent finale to the season. There are some quirks or some moments that I don't like or think are just maybe a little bit weird. And then just one or two things is that just like some characters are kind of just absent for this last episode. You see Blessing with his family dancing as Dexter's making his speech at the end about needing good people in his life, but they're not really in the episode. We're kind of done with any development with those characters. And then the other one that's not around this episode that I thought was kind of notable, not that I have anywhere in the plot that we got here to fit her in, but Elsa is just completely absent here and was pretty absent last episode as well. So I assume they must be thinking they're getting a season 2. And I kind of quick Googled to see if it had been renewed. It seems like it's not actually been renewed yet, technically, but they're expecting it, so they've got a writer's room set up, and they're already planning for when they're going to shoot it. So I guess that looks positive, even though the official renewal announcement doesn't seem to have happened yet. But so that's where we are with that side of things. So maybe they're hoping to take on more stuff with those characters next season. I think Elsa in particular, it kind of felt like we were building to something with her and Harrison, and then this new character comes into the picture and kind of becomes the new love interest. And that was fine. And potentially there's some story there about maybe Elsa having some, I don't know if jealousy is the right word, but certainly, maybe reacts, maybe realizes she did have some feelings that she was perhaps ignoring now that she's seen him with someone else. It kind of felt like it was building to that, and we just kind of don't have any of it here. She's not even around in this episode. So maybe that's just something they're hoping for to go back to when we get to a potential season 2. I'll get the big complaint out of the way, okay? I've got a couple of little ones, but the big one, if you've been paying attention to the reviews up until this point for the rest of this season, you know where I'm going with this, right? You can tell by the way I walk my walk where I'm going with this complaint. Claudette is at the gala with her partner. She's in a dress. She looks very uncomfortable to be in a dress. Her partner's clearly attracted to her and is trying to get her to loosen up, and she just will not have none of it. And she's just kind of there with him and is oblivious to anything that's going on. There's a little bit of tension at one point that Harrison kind of has to keep out of her line of sight, but for the most part, it's not really that consequential. However, she decides it's time to go, right? Before all the big stuff goes down at the end where the police all become aware that something's happening in the mansion, she's going to leave. The partner's trying to talk her out of it, but she's made up her mind, she's going. And then, from the dance floor, the notes of Staying Alive begin to echo throughout the mansion. And she gets this look in her eye. right? She's like a lion who's just spotted a wounded gazelle. It's time to feed. It's time for mummy to get what's hers. She's going to go dance to the Bee Gees, and no one's going to stop her. So she does. She goes to the dance floor. She just storms there without saying a word, and then just starts doing the Saturday Night Fever style dancing very intensely, and then makes a comment about the partner joining in. So he does, and he seems to be enjoying himself. Look, I thought this running thing with her in that one song was kind of silly. And I feel like I still think it's kind of silly. I did laugh during the majority of this, so, and maybe they were going for that reaction, and if so, maybe they got exactly what they wanted out of me in that sense. I just kind of wish it was like, not the same song every time. If you want to sell me the idea that she is a Bee Gees fan, right? Have her listening to different Bee Gees songs. Staying Alive's the big obvious one, so have that first. And then the second time she's listening to music, have it be one of the other songs, right? I don't really know them well enough to name anymore, but just, I would know them if I heard them. I would still be able to tell that's the Bee Gees. So do that, and then have Staying Alive not come back again until this scene, until this moment where it's like she's triggered and she has to go dance like a maniac. She's a maniac on the dance floor, dancing like she's never danced before. I'm making lots of weird dance references and music references here, but I just, it would have felt a bit more, I don't know, less, or it would have felt less cartoony, I think is what I'm trying to say. I think the fact that it was always the one song, and only that song is what she ever listens to, and it's only that song that would trigger this reaction, but she would drop everything she feels to just go dance because she wants to get lost in the Bee Gees. And Staying Alive specifically. So, I mean, I don't know if they wanted me shaking my head as I was laughing, but I definitely was laughing as she was storming back to the dance floor. There was like a split second where I thought, oh, please don't tell me this is like made her have an epiphany where she's about to go solve something, or she's realized something's going on because the Bee Gees has cleared her mind. I was a little bit worried that we're going to do that, given that every time she was listening to it before was when she was got into her Sherlock mode and she was detecting and whatnot. So I'm glad it was just she's going to go and, I don't know, fangirl out. I suppose like a weird sentence to say about her, given she's so serious about everything, but she's effectively fangirling to the Bee Gees. So anyway, that's that. I've addressed it. We can move on with our lives and get on to the main beef of the episode. Beef? The main meat of the episode is what I meant to say. It doesn't have to specifically be beef, but I mean, I think if you ask someone to name a meat, beef might be the first one they mention, so that's fair. Anyway, so yeah, Dexter's locked in the vault, no way out. I should probably mention, yeah, there's a moment here where instead of Harrison, he sees his brother, the ice truck killer. They got this actor back to taunt him a little bit, and I was, I complained a lot in episode 1 about all the cameos and these dream sequences, which were just kind of fan service. I'm not as mad at this as I was at that, and maybe part of that's just because I have been having an okay amount of fun this back half of the season, so I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'll throw you a bone and not care that much. But I wouldn't say I liked this either. It did still just feel a little bit like, oh, we just want to show this actor back again. It feels like a big deal to see the ice truck killer once more and have him taunt Dexter, and maybe they're setting up the idea that they can have any of the characters that he's encountered in the past taunt him that are dead. So we could still have Batista next season. We could have Batista, who's a ghost in his mind, talking to him and try to talk him out of things, or talk him into things, or just taunt him, or whatever. Having said that, I do kind of like the genuine, kind of sweet goodbye that he gives Batista. Because the whole idea here, as much as I don't like the ace truck killer kind of being the one who does it, I am kind of into this idea of him actually feeling physical pain because he doesn't really understand why he cares so much. Because he always tries to tell himself that he doesn't care about people, that he's a sociopath and all the rest of it. And it feels like that's always been kind of a lie. Like, that's what he tells himself, but he really does kind of care about some people. And this is the sort of perfect example of someone who he tried to keep on the periphery. Obviously, he's cared about his wife before. He cares about Harrison. That's never really been in question, at least not much anyway. But like Batista and all those other like side characters were the ones that he'd always push off to the side and like keep that distance from. but he actually cares. You know, you were a good cop, you were a better man, blah 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 blah. It's a nice little speech he makes. The actual kind of like, you know, the plot of like how do we get Dexter out the vault and Harrison come to help him. There's some fun stuff there. I enjoy Harrison taking the job at the gala, like he turned down last episode so he can get into the building. Him being on the phone with Dexter and Dexter watching through the camera the entire time to try and give him directions and get him to the room. I thought that was a fun little sequence, and Harrison thinking on his feet when a guard almost catches him to blame it on his friend who's high. I thought that was a nice little moment as well. It was quick thinking. It made sense. I was into most of the sequence of events. And I also think the standoff with Charlie, where Dexter on the phone kind of says, hey, you know, let me out, we'll disappear, I'm never going to hurt your mother. I never did, you know, I didn't hurt your mother. I could have, right? You know, I was there, but I didn't because that's not who I am. And her response ends up being pissed that Leon, because Dexter at this point has been through a bunch of the files in there, and he's found that she's got a file in there with a bunch of surveillance photos, and she's keeping tabs on her and all that. And she's pissed at that. She wants to go and confront Leon. But she does say, look, I won't kill Harrison because you let my mother live, but I don't owe you anything, so I'm not letting you out. And she leaves. So I think that's fine. I also, you know, there's some tension here about him looking through the files to get the code for the door. We know that if it's incorrect, the alarm's going to go off and a bunch of cops are going to hear it and come running to see what's going on. And it's not going to look very good if he's trapped in here with a dead body. Even though he's smart enough not to touch the gun that Leon used. He knows that he can't put his fingerprints on that, right? That's the murder weapon. That'll prove it was him. Let's not worry about that. But he's looking through the codes. He thinks that maybe the date the Leon's parents died, but then it turns out to be the prison number that Leon's parents' killer had, right? And he's looking through the things. This actually also answered how he was going to get to the Rapunzel killer, because the files in here have all the information we need. They have the locations, the addresses, and Dexter notably grabs a handful of these. Doesn't take all of them, but he takes a bunch of them, probably the ones that are still active if I was to guess, because he wouldn't need the ones that are already caught or dead, for the most part. Although he does leave New York Ripper, right? That's like Claudette's ending when they get into this room after they've kind of like, you know, taken in what's going on. Is the partner's like, hey, look at this. And it's like, New York Ripper, real name, so-and-so. I didn't even catch what the name was. It may have been I don't know if it was like a tease of someone or a reference to something else that was cheeky. It didn't ring a bell in the moment, and I don't remember what it is now. But she gets this look in her face like, oh God, finally we've got him, whoever this prick is. So, you know, in a way, alerting the police to this location, which Dexter does choose to do. He intentionally sets off the alarm on his way out to bring them all here. He's almost throwing them a bone a little bit and saying, here's some other cases you've not solved. This is enough to let them go. But the juicy ones that I can still go and kill, I'm going to take those. So he's taking those files with him. I think the critiques I would have with this Dexter plot of like getting out the vault and then everything that kind of comes after that in the mansion, I do love him choosing to, like, you know, go back and, you know, deal with the various things and set, you know, make sure everyone knows that Leon did this and set up the room and all that. I like those elements of it. The part that I was less excited about, or I thought it felt like padding to me, where I was like, okay, just get on with it now, is after the doors opened, right, and they do the whole thing where Harrison's phone, or Dexter's phone's died, Batista's phone that Dexter's using has died, and he doesn't know if Harrison got the last digit or two of the code. But Harrison just hits enter, right? But he has to take it on a leap of faith that the code was finished. He doesn't know for sure. And the door opens. It's a nice enough moment. It works. It's good, right? Doors open. Now we get to see them work together. All the rest of it, Harrison has to escape on his own the way he came in, because that's more... you know, it's like he can sneak out that way because he's he's there to serve, right? He's there to be a waiter, so he can sneak out. Obviously, it goes tits up when Leon like catches him moving around and then gets him at gunpoint, and we get the standoff that we get by the end. But the bit that I was like, can we get on with this, was right in between all this stuff, which was when the door's been opened, but then there's like just a couple of minutes where, oh no, I need the thumb for the scanner. I need the thumbprint. Where is it? And he goes looking for it, and he ends up finding it on Batista. But there's a bit of a search happening, and it kind of becomes the main focus for a couple of minutes. And it's not even really that long in the grand scheme of things. But I just felt like at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of done with this vault room at this point, and we're having a reason to have him still in here, and I'm like, oh, are we going to tease that he's going to get locked in again, or are we going to, whatever. Like I found that couple of minutes a little bit frustrating, where I don't know if you really needed that in particular. I mean, maybe that's when he stumbles into something that he uses later, so it's important for it. But like, it felt like a little bit like we're stretching this now. Let's get to the next part, which is, Leon knowing that they're out, trying to be nice at the gala, but, rushing away so he can go and get a gun and go after Harrison. And, at this point, he's like full on, oh, I got a taste for it now. I killed Batista, so now I'm like, I've got the great yearning that you called it. I'm going to take out Harrison. Dexter tries to make a whole plea about shoot me instead, let him go. And then Leon's just like, well, that sounds all good and all, but I can't leave a witness, so you're both dead. And it's actually the syringe that Dexter gave Harrison for protection a couple of episodes ago that Harrison jabs him with, and that knocks him down. So we get the kill scene. We get him, wrapped up on the table in his own kill vault, and Dexter, does his thing and whatnot. I guess the most interesting thing about this kill scene, though, and this is, to be fair, true of a lot of them, is usually the reaction of the killer once they realize they've been got and that they've got no hope. Some sort of know that they're about to die and they just kind of make peace with it. Some get really scared. Some are just kind of in shock. Leon just immediately being a little bitch and begging and saying he'll pay him whatever he wants. He'll pay for Harrison's, like, the rest of his life. Like, Harrison's grandkids will be covered for college if he just lets him go. That is, I think, like, a good sequence. It's a good cathartic moment, because he's been, like, owning everyone all season. He's been keeping tabs on people. He's been paying people off. Even Charlie, he's controlling with both threats and money. So it's really nice to see him have to beg and realize that his money's not going to save him. And there's a little moment where he thinks he's convinced Dexter, and then Dexter's like, because Dexter says, oh, you know what, I'm not going to get the blood sample for my slide. And he's like, oh, you've decided not to. Oh, I knew you'd see things my way. And then he's like, oh, no, you don't understand. I just don't want to remember you. Like, I'm still going to kill you. And then the way he quivers. So I guess what I'm saying more than anything here is that Peter Dinklage did a really good job with the performance in this scene. I very much enjoyed watching him squirm and beg, and, the ultimate kill happening. And Dexter reminding him before he does it that, after this moment, you're going to be remembered as a cop killer with a serial killer fetish, because they're finding this room. They're going to know who you are. So he dies knowing that. I will critique one thing here, though, a little bit, is that earlier on in this vault room, we had, at least a gunshot go off in the wine room next door, and we had a bunch of things happen, and no one in the gala heard it, right? And I realized the gala is louder because there's there's music playing, there's a bunch of people all talking, but a gunshot's a gunshot, right? And it's a room full of cops specifically, so you think they would maybe notice it a bit more than others. And I didn't really have a problem with that at the time. I just kind of assumed, oh, this place is far away enough that they wouldn't hear it, right? And this vault and wine area are soundproofed because this vault is super secretive, so he's got it all completely hidden away, including sound. And I was like, fine with that. Like, I didn't even think about it beyond that. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. No worries. However, when Leon's on the table and Dexter's getting ready to kill him, they can hear the crowd chanting for him because they're announcing like the fundraiser goal, or their tally for the night, and they're all cheering and chanting for him and clapping and all the rest of it, and they can hear it in the vault room because Dexter even points it out and says, hey, listen to that, because everything's about to change once they find out who you are. So if they can hear them from the vault room, like, I'm not saying it's impossible that people from the gala wouldn't be able to hear stuff, because again, it's much louder there than it is here. But I would have to assume the gunshot that went off, because when Leon gets jabbed and he tries to shoot Dexter and that, like, he fires off the gun. Not to mention, I mean, I think when he shot Batista, like, everyone wasn't there yet. It was much quieter. which arguably might mean that the staff that are around upstairs or downstairs maybe should have heard it. I don't know. Like, I realize I'm talking about this a lot for what's effectively just a stupid little plot hole. It's not a big deal. I don't want to make it sound like this is a big complaint, because it really isn't. It's a minor thing. I just noticed it because they went out of their way to point out that Dexter could hear the crowd and that Leon could hear the crowd when they were in that vault room later when he's committing the kill. But earlier on, gunshots weren't being audible. It just, like, immediately my mind thought of that, and I couldn't, like, you know, I had to sort of be like, okay, whatever. You want it for your dramatic moment so Dexter can make his little speech, but it's a little maybe ingenuous compared to what, you know, disingenuous is what I'm trying to say there. It's a little disingenuous as to how the rules were working earlier as far as the sound carrying, because it tends to carry in both directions for the most part, because the door was open, and in fact they weren't even in the vault when he shot the gun outside. It was out in the wine cellar area that's outside the door. So I mean, again, not a big deal, but it is something I noticed as I was watching. Which is why I said, like, most of my quibbles are kind of small. I think the big one I had was kind of that bit in the middle where they're looking for the thumbprint for like one little step too many, where I was like, all right, get on with this. Like, I'm done with the escape in the vault part of the story. So yeah, I mean, that was that. Obviously the cops run in, they find the fingerprints on the gun, although the fact that they already have results for those while they're still standing at the crime scene did seem a little bit far-fetched. I get that it's probably much quicker than it used to be, and we don't really know how much they've been spending time in there, but it couldn't have been that long, because Claudette hadn't noticed the New York Ripper weapon on the wall yet, and she noticed these things pretty quick, because it's after they find out, the techie says, hey, guess whose prints were on that gun? It's after that where the partner points out, look at this. And it's like, wait, so they couldn't have been there long. If anything, I'm still surprised she didn't notice that as soon as she walked in the room. Like, her eyes, given the way she, like, hones in on things, you'd think she'd hone in on it immediately. So, again, not a big deal. Minor little, like, quibble at best, right? It's not really that important. I will say, though, they did do a lot of nice stuff with the visuals at the end, because Dexter cuts up the body and takes the bags with him, and he goes out on Leon's boat, which, again, I would maybe critique, like, I get that he's not around to take his boat with him, but wouldn't there be like a record of this being his boat, and someone might, you know, some security cameras might see you at the docks taking his boat out or something? Maybe not. Maybe this is something he had like on the hush-hush, this boat, even though it's like a, you know, multi-million-dollar vessel that he's sailing out. So again, minor logistical quibble there, but all the visuals of him being out in the water with the Statue of Liberty and New York City like behind him were quite good. Like, because it felt like, obviously this was a big thing that happened a lot back in the original show, especially in the early days, was him taking the boat out and dumping the body bags into the water. This felt like that on steroids, where, hey, we've got this beautiful vista behind us. And I mean, maybe they were doing a good job of faking it. Maybe this is like some level of like green screen or something. But it kind of just looked like they'd shot it out in the water with New York in the background. It feels like they just did that, and they kind of like, you know, they did a couple of big moments back in the first couple of episodes of showing Times Square and whatever, like the big locations that are hard to like pay for and get to because they're so busy and they cost so much. It felt like they kept the one little thing in the back pocket for the end of the season to say, hey, look, we're in New York the whole time. Remember, look how pretty this is with all these lights in the background. So visually, that was quite good. And the episode actually ends there. It ends with Dexter almost gets a little bit too meta, where he's like, I'm exactly who I should be. And then he looks right at the camera and says, I'm exactly who you want me to be, which almost felt like the writers being like, yeah, we just turned him back into the good old Dexter so we can keep doing more Dexter. Aren't we all happy? So I kind of want to cynically roll my eyes at that a little bit, but it was mostly fine. It wasn't the best episode, though, I don't think. I think the last, like, 2 or 3 episodes definitely had all my favorite things in them from the season. I think that's where it found its strengths the most. Here, it was a pretty decent enough wrap-up to everything. I think Dexter and Harrison having to work together so that they feel like they trust each other more by the end of it, and, you know, Harrison says that line where he's like, hey, that better be the last time you ever ask someone to shoot you in the chest. Kind of like him, you know, obviously not wanting his dad to die now, because he cares about him perhaps even more than he did in the previous show when they knew each other. You know, the relationship's developed a bit. It feels a bit despite who Dexter is, it feels oddly kind of healthy. Yeah. Also, I assume everyone probably liked the moment where Harry in Dexter's head when he's storming back to save to save Harrison, because he's gotten the call that Leon's got him at gunpoint, and he walks past like Ghost Harry, where he's just like, "Get that son of a bitch." It just made me laugh because I feel like Harry, like, he's a little bit one note at times, where he always just kind of contradicts whatever Dexter's saying without any kind of like sense of consistency, where he'll just kind of like make a counterpoint to whatever Dexter says. Because there's one in this episode where he's sort of debating like, hey, are you asking Harrison to come here because you know that if you're not here to protect him, it'll be bad for him, so you're doing it for him, or are you doing it because you don't want to die for yourself? And Dexter quite rightly says, well, both can be true. Like, you know, I think both could be somewhat, equal here. Which I actually feel like a healthy response, all things considered. But given that, the previous show with him ended with him wanting to die in some form, and then this ended with him fighting to live. Like, I can see the dramatic through line to that, and kind of the like how that maybe pays off for long time fans of the character. So yeah, not bad. Charlie goes and gets her mum and leaves the city, and that's pretty much it. It's kind of presented as a sweet moment where Charlie's kind of innocent and doesn't really like a lot of the things that Leon has her do. She doesn't even know he's dead at this point. She basically just tells him to go get stuffed, and that she'll tell everyone what he's been up to if he ever comes after her or her mum. So yeah, fair enough. So she goes off. I do think sometimes, like Uma Thurman, who obviously is a good actress, but sometimes she does go on a bit on the cheesy side, which fits the pulpiness of the show, to be fair. And it also fit my favourite thing with Uma Thurman in it, which is Kill Bill. And I felt a little bit of Kill Bill, actually, at one point in this, where she just says, be cool, a couple times. Like, be cool, be cool. And it felt like something Beatrice would say from Kill Bill. It felt like it was reminding me of her performance in that a little bit. The character's nothing I like, of course, but it was reminding me a little bit, just in the performance and the way she delivered the line. It felt just a little bit cheesy, and I could see her saying that in that movie. So, anywho, maybe she did say it, I don't know. If she actually said that line, I don't remember it specifically, but it sounds like something she could have said in that movie. But that's my thoughts on the finale and the season as a whole, which was better than I really thought it was going to be. I don't think it's like a appointment TV viewing. I don't think it's like earth-shatteringly amazing or anything like that. But after it gets out of its way with some of the bullshit at the start, with the nostalgia and fan service of all the dead characters getting their cameos, I think the main through line of Dexter and the dinner party of serial killers and how he like processes that, I think his relationship with Blessing was kind of sweet and interesting. Harrison, I liked more so in the first episode. Then I think he struggled a little bit early on when it was just the police investigation. Like him being worried about Claudette, like interviewing him and getting all shaky about the fact that he killed someone. That was a little bit weaker, and it shifted to being Dexter had the better stuff. I think the back half of the season, though, once they were together and once we got that scene at the college where they both talked to Claudette, and then this final episode where they're working together, I think they both benefited from that. Like, I was a little bit worried that one would always be the weaker link between the two. And I think once they were together, I actually kind of liked how they played off some of those beats. It just isn't flawless, and it's definitely cheesy at times, and it still does the whole Ice Drop Killer return just to pop the fan base here at the end. And there's a couple of little things you have to just overlook in terms of, someone really should have heard that. Maybe it's actually kind of risky taking his boat out because, there's a record that that's his boat, and there might be... I can't imagine this boat was just like down like some dark like creek or something where no one could see it, right? I assume he had to go get it at the docks. So anyway, that is it. That's it. The Dexter Resurrection season finale, and maybe there's a season 2. Will I watch season 2? That is up to Cindy or any other patrons who want to make me watch it. I don't think I would be choosing to watch it per se, but who knows? Maybe someone's going to put me through it. But that is my thoughts on the show. Let me know what you thought of this season in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that usual stuff. Helps out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support all the content and support the shows and reviews over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership. Thanks to everyone who already does. And it's been a pleasure. Surprisingly more so than I thought going through this season. So I'll see you guys next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?